We're doing it. Are we doing it without headphones?
Yeah, we'll do it without headphones.
Right. Lovely.
We'll do it without headphones because
Okay.
I love the hat. Cassidy,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm
Welcome.
better now. I'm here with you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Where does one even start? I guess I'm a bit of a riddle myself.
Yeah.
But mostly I'm a singer and a speaker
Yeah.
is my main kind of thing. I like to call myself the hype girl you never knew you needed.
That's an interesting tagline.
Yes.
Do you make people realize that you need them?
Yeah, I like to think so. My goal in most of my DJ shows that I do every week, I sing and DJ at the same time.
Yeah.
And the goal is to turn a very chill venue into a complete chaotic party. So that's my mission I've accomplished every week for 3 years. So let's keep it going.
And that's at Graysland, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And then because I looked through some of your Instagram feed and realized that you actually speak Bahasa.
Yes, I do. I lived in Malaysia for 3 years, but I lived in Asia for 6 years total and traveled there for 10 years. So I sing in Malay, Mandarin, and Cantonese. But I speak Malay. I haven't learned to speak any Chinese languages.
Right. Because my mum's Indonesian.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Amazing.
So I was trying to work out, are you Malaysian?
Right.
Are you know.
I know, it's crazy. I sing some Indonesian songs as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm, I guess, Scottish and English background.
Yeah.
And then, I was living in Asia working at Universal Studios. I used to work at Movie World on the Gold Coast as Marilyn Monroe. Went over to Singapore to do that. And then I was performing with local bands on the side, and they dared me to sing a song in their language because no one had really ever done it. And that was when, YouTube and things were first a thing. And we posted one video and it was an overnight viral sensation.
And YouTube in Asia is completely different to YouTube here, right? Because they totally get it.
Oh, yeah.
All of the time.
Yeah, all the time. Life is your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, TikTok was massive when I left Malaysia and I was like, this thing's crazy.
Yeah.
And then got back here and everyone was just being what's TikTok? So, yeah, they're definitely ahead of the game in the social media world.
So your friends dared you to sing a song in Malaysian.
Yeah.
It blew up.
Yeah.
And then you just continued on.
Slowly but surely. So it was kind of like an alternate universe because within 24 hours there were people taxi drivers were stopping their cars on the road being like, Cassidy, I loved your song. And I was like, what are you talking about? But we did it really professionally. So instead of it just being a little candid video, we made a music video to a popular song and we ended up getting nominated for a music award for that cover.
Out of a dare.
Out of a dare.
What the hell?
Exactly. I know, right? I know. So then, I didn't do another cover for a while. I just gradually did them. But I started learning the language thinking maybe it was, I guess, the reaction from people was so beautiful that it became sort of a little bit addictive because it really bridged the gap, I think, culturally. For some people, they had never seen someone from a Western country trying to sing Malay because it's such a small country, their music. So, I guess it really bonded me with a lot of people really instantly. You'd see them on the street and so you'd be like, oh, well, I could do another one. Then next thing you know, fast forward 5 years and you're living in that country.
I totally love the fact that it all started from a dare and then it kind of blew up and you kind of were like, okay, this is possibly a thing that I need to pursue and do. And then you ended up living there for 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Had to drag me out kicking and screaming.
You would have come across so many challenges or situations, you know, being an expat foreigner,
Seriously. I do always say I've got to write a book someday. Everyone hears my stories and it was crazy. I don't think I did it in the most strategic way either. I'm very just whatever, super relaxed.
On the whim.
Yeah, on a whim. Everything's on a whim. Nothing's ever planned out. It's just all intuition. So
Sometimes that's the best.
right?
Yeah, because you can, I don't know, like lose some of the energy of the spontaneity of things. I don't know.
Exactly. I found that every time in my life that, say, my record label, I used to be under Warner Music, whenever they would like make a strategy for me, it never worked.
Oh.
And then what I would do intuitively that was just completely like, oh, I just really resonate with that. Bang. Huge. Viral hit. Everyone's like, and you're like, but that was just like a little joke or whatever. So for me, it taught me all about like following intuition. I probably need to learn a bit more strategy. But yeah, it definitely works for me. But when it came to moving there and I guess having crazy experiences and everything, I guess the hardest thing for me was I moved over there not knowing anyone at all. Like when I landed in Malaysia, I didn't know anyone. I wasn't signed to a record label yet. One of their big celebrities, I'd been offered record deals, but not the right one. And I'd educated myself at least on what I wanted. And someone who was very famous over there, Amy Search, said to me, I think I see it for you. It's going to happen, but I think you have to be there. I think just like throw caution to the wind and move there and it'll happen. And within 3 weeks, I was signed to like my dream label and all that sort of stuff. So, but the flip side of that is being a solo female with no support network whatsoever in a foreign country.
It's, oh my God, there's like so much to unpack from that.
Welcome to my world.
Like
How many hours?
So you took advice from someone over there and then within 3 weeks you're like,
yeah, I just
signed a
dropped everything.
label and.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did a concert for the consulate. There's like a Malaysian festival in Sydney. And so I'd been flying to Malaysia doing big gigs. I'd been performing already at that stage. I'd done stuff for their like prime minister and stuff. So there was attention, but there wasn't. I know. What is my life?
What? What do you mean?
Oh, I got to tell you this story.
What do you mean you've been doing stuff for the Prime Minister?
I know, but this shows you. Okay, I'll give you an
Hang
example.
on. Are you a secret agent? Are you surveying me or something?
You're on to me. Yes. Bring in the troops. What do you say? I don't know.
Roger that.
Roger. Coffee. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've just outed myself that I'm not a CIA agent.
Yeah.
But I mean, an example of how I guess detail oriented I can be is when I first moved there, I booked a show and it was like a government that usually book me for things. And so I was like, yeah, same thing. I'll show up on the day. And the night before they were sending me all these really strict instructions. And so I was like, can I just ask, why are the instructions so strict for tomorrow's show? And my parents were flying in. They were just going to come to the show on the way. And they said, do you realize where you're performing? And I was like, yeah, I've got the address here. And they're like, that's the King's Palace. You're performing for the king tomorrow. That's why you have to have a sash on a certain way. You've got to learn the bow. And I was like, and then I looked it up in English and it translates to King's Palace. But, so yeah, it's been a wild ride. And I was like, okay. So then there you go. An example of how crazy my world's been.
I've had so many interesting guests on this podcast, and to sit down with someone who's performed in front of a king or at the King's Palace, I'm like, this whole podcasting thing is just a wild ride for me.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. But I mean, everyone's got stories, right?
Everyone has a story.
Yeah, there's so many like different elements to, I guess, every person that you meet on the street. And we all just assume we've all had very similar lives. Yeah. Don't we? Yeah, I can imagine some of the stories you've uncovered. I mean, love this
I did a podcast with someone who introduced Michael Jackson to receive the key of Melbourne.
That is amazing.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my God. That's like, not many people have had the honor to interact with him. I have a friend who would just die. She would be hyperventilating even knowing that.
So take me back to like your childhood.
Oh,
were you always a performer?
Yes, it's in my blood.
It's in your blood. So your parents are performers?
Yeah. My mother is a very talented singer and now award-winning sculptor.
Oh.
And my father is a stunt coordinator.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and an amputee. So we've got a wild ride, and my grandfather's also an amputee. So we've got a crazy family.
Yeah. And so you kind of like lived in a household of performers and that kind of like, it's
Yeah.
just kind of like what you're used to, right?
Absolutely. That's our normal. My brother is also an amazing musician. He's a few years older than me.
Mm.
And so he was always listening to music, and it was just like always music going on in the house.
Mm.
So yeah, it was definitely performing's our world.
If you weren't doing music and performances, what would you be?
Well, now I'm sort of branching out into motivational speaking
Yeah.
and or writing. I want to be an author one day as well.
Mm.
I really think that, my journey hasn't exactly been easy. So I think that there's ways that we can use those experiences to help others. So I've
Mm.
always felt, I guess, called to do that. So I think that's what I would be. I went back recently to uni and got my master's in arts management
Mm.
because I really love organising events as well. But yeah, I think the passion's in motivation.
It's probably because you've been involved in so many events and like seen
Yeah.
how the background,
Yeah.
behind the scenes works, that
Yeah.
you're like you were really interested in that and
Yes.
really wanted to like excel or like improve the way that things ran and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I guess, you don't realize how much you know until you go back and study the theory and you go,
Mm.
oh, I've been doing this for 20 years. So,
You're not that old, 20 years?
yeah, I'm 36. I started when I was 16 was when I started
Wow.
performing professionally. Yeah.
do you remember your first performance?
Oh, gosh, don't remind me. Well, I've been dancing since I was a kid, but singing for me was different because singing, I think, is a lot more vulnerable.
Yeah.
So for me, I have always suffered really bad stage fright. Surprisingly, I'm actually like an introvert. Introverted extrovert. And so, yeah, for me, singing, because your body's the instrument, it feels like you're bearing your soul. And,
Mm.
Australian tall poppy syndrome. If you dare to shine too bright, you often can get sort of chopped down at the knees. So I was always very, I guess, scared of singing. I was very vulnerable in that way. So, yeah, my first performance, you get like when you're nervous, you get like these cracks in your voice when you're a teenager. And so guys' voices, they break audibly when they speak, but for women, it's generally just when they sing. So when I first tried to get out there and sing in a competition, my voice cracked the whole way through, and I was so mortified that I stopped singing for 5 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was so like, I'm never going to sing again. And here we are.
So what made you decide to 5 years later, like pick it up again?
I was forced to.
Oh, don't say your mum.
Yeah, no, I was. It wasn't my mum. I worked at Movie World, but I was a dancer and
Yeah.
a costume character. And someone heard that I could sing, and they had said, you should try out for Marilyn Monroe, but Marilyn has to sing. And so I almost didn't go to my audition. I literally wasn't going to go. They put the audition up knowing that I was wanting to go for the role.
Right.
And I still wasn't going to go because I just didn't want to sing for them. And the most beautiful feedback when I pushed myself through the nerves was he's like, where did that come from? Because he'd known me for years, but he didn't know that I sang. And I've used Marilyn as my look for like the last 2 decades. So yeah sometimes you got to lean into that fear, don't you?
You totally need to lean into the fear.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, like I wouldn't have pictured you as being an introvert.
No one ever does.
I also wouldn't have pictured you as someone who gets stage fright or gets nervous. So
All the time.
what do you do to kind of like work your way through that?
Yeah. It was a huge challenge for me. And I guess now I have the tools required, right? So like anything with creative people, we can obviously be very sensitive. I don't know if in your photography work you were like, you care about it, right? So
Yeah,
you get really
100%.
sensitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I am. It's more like I'm a very sensitive soul. So I would be spending too much time when you get into performing mode, you get out of your body because you're worried about all the other elements and what you can see in front of you and how people are reacting. And so I found this incredible, it was actually a Reiki master and a singer. And he taught me some meditation exercises to do that will get you back in your body before a performance, because I was, not being my language, you can't fudge the words when it's not your language. If you stuff them up, you're like, what do I make sounds? Like in English, you can just change the words. So he taught me to breathe, get centered, and like be in your body again. And that has sort of helped everything slow down. But I still get nervous every time.
That's so interesting that you went out and sought like outside help to like assist you or teach you in like different techniques because you realized that it wasn't like it wasn't good for you to be having these out of body experiences, and you wanted to like maintain control.
Yeah, and it's still like literally every day a fight. I think if you're naturally an anxious person, and I just care so much, like I'm a bit of a perfectionist with my work too. I want to really, for me, it's not about, I think a lot of musicians performing can be about what people think of you. But for me, I'm so desperately worried about other people having a great time. So when I'm performing, it's really hard for me to not be like, oh, am I doing enough to like activate the space? Is everyone having a good time? Like, am I playing the right songs? So even now, like every job that I do, I want to do the best job that I can do and create an impact. So you've got to really constantly find ways to quiet the voices and just be in the moment, because it's out of the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking a second ago about, signing up to a record label or something, and then the things that they do don't really hit the mark, but then the things that you do hit the mark. And like I think part of that is around being authentic with yourself. And what you described just then, like during your performances, you kind of are being strategic because you know the outcome or what you want to get. Like you want to increase the energy level of the audience that you're performing to, so you know what like levers to pull. And that's kind of like who you are.
100%. Great observation. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess you learn what works, right? Like what gets the desired reaction. But sorry, I'm hitting your microphone here. I think for me, the hardest thing has been learning to trust myself, because in the recording industry or in anything, right, I feel like the time at which we grew up, we were taught, especially in the music industry, you just need to get good enough to be noticed and then the professionals will take over. Whereas now the music industry is flipped on its head, and a lot of industries where with social media, these people have sort of lost their power in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So now it's about you building your own brand and continuing to stay authentic to that brand. And every time I tried to walk away from that authenticity, it just never worked. So it has been a full life journey of learning to trust myself.
And it is interesting with the advancements of technology and like social media and all this, the tools that are available now are so readily accessible. It's how you use them to build that personal brand, but it's also the knowledge of them as well, because like there's so many different things that you could do to get the same outcome.
And it paralyzes a lot of people, right? There's too much choice. There's too much strategy. There's too many different platforms to focus on. And everyone's like, I don't have a team of 85 people to full-time create content for me. And that's been a huge battle for me too, because when I also first moved back, I realized, I'm really great at social media, but I am not present in the moment with my friends and family. So, I find that there was a motivational speaker recently that I saw. I wish I remembered his name so I could credit him for it, but he said we get stuck in knowledge loops. And he said that we're all stuck in like going out and getting all the knowledge on how to do the thing, and then we're not actually doing the thing. And I'm so guilty of that. If you look at my social media, I've barely posted in the last few years because I've been like, but I don't have a content plan. I don't have a strategy. And it's like, yeah, but you don't need one. Just post something.
Yeah,
and anything,
you definitely don't need one.
right? You just
That's
post.
That's such an interesting concept, the knowledge loop. I spoke to someone, or the last podcast actually, about like when I was a photographer, I was always sharing my techniques or like tools or like how I do things.
Yeah.
And I always knew that because some of my mates were like, oh, why do you share all this stuff? Like you're giving away your secrets, you know, and I was always like, well, no, I'm going to share what I do and how I do it. And if someone can do it better, then that's great.
Yes.
Like I'll learn off them because I've pushed it to the greatest capacity that I could do it at.
Yeah.
You know, and no one's pushing me. So like share how you do things. But because people are in a knowledge loop, they just learn and then they don't do.
Yes.
You know, and and so then what happens is they end up just coming to you anyway.
Exactly. They do.
Yeah.
They do. And that's one of the things I think a lot of people are scared to share their secrets because they say, well, I don't, it actually behind the scenes, when someone doesn't want to share the tools of what they've learnt and they're cutting off and controlling that knowledge pass on, which is how we've all gotten and evolved to where we are, it actually reveals the fact that they are quite insecure, I believe, because you have to get centered and understand that there is literally only one you. And that was something that I'm so at peace with. Someone stole my entire set list recently, and they stole all of the songs that I play that work, and they even in the songs sang and said the words that I say. Literally. And I was like, am I crazy? Like, have they stolen my set list? But not only that, they went on stage and performed it, the performer before me, at my residency. So I'm just about to walk on stage with this list of songs prepared. And they're playing it. And they're saying the things that I normally say in those gaps of that song. And I was just like baffled. But I was like, this is either a moment that I crack it or I learn to adjust. Because that person, I can look at it as they've stolen my thing, or I can take it as what an honor that I've inspired them to up their game and do their thing. And I was like, and now that's going to force me, if I'm willing to rise to the challenge, to get off my butt. And I literally just had my computer there and I had to make up a whole new set on the spot. And I had a really great show. Was I angry? Of course I was, but that was ego.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things where we need to be passing on, I guess, our knowledge to other people, but understanding that not everyone's going to, because at the end of the day, aren't they a little bit afraid that someone's going to emulate or copy what they do? But there's only one us.
But copying is like the highest form of flattery, isn't it?
That's what they say.
Like it's a compliment if someone is taking your work and like doing the exact same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I would look at work from photographers overseas and go, oh, I like what they've done there, or I like what this person's done here. And then I'd like merge two together and try to make it my own. Yeah. And, you know, I think that's the creative element to things. Like if someone's just going to copy it, okay, that's great. Yeah. But it's kind of like people are going to know that that's not yours, which is totally fine as well. But it's kind of like, you know.
Everyone draws inspiration, don't they? Like I feel like we're like, it's a little bit woo-woo, but we are like, when you're in the creative state, you are channeling. Like you are just a channel for like something to come into creation. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who made it. Like it's so exciting to see something new that hasn't been done in that way before. And no one's 100% original. We've all been influenced by something without noticing. Like I'll sing a run and be like, oh, wow, that sounds like Alan Stone. You can tell I listened to him solidly for 10 years. You know, like you can just be like, oh, everyone takes inspiration, but the way that I did that performance was not a copy of his, you know. It's very I think I could get down a very big rabbit hole of this because it's all about, I guess, authenticity. Yeah. At the end of the day.
I think just back to the like sharing of information. I think it's interesting because like pre-internet, right? Like everything was written on pen and paper, and then when the internet came about, 2000, there was the .com boom, and everybody needed to have a website. So it was like information overload, you know, and if you didn't have a website, you weren't going to be successful, you couldn't get your business out or whatever, right? Yeah. And then I think, you know, during that time, there was a lot of skepticism around the internet and like what value it has and blah, 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 like all that type of stuff. And, you know, people were still old school. They wanted to like rely on books or pen and paper and, you know, the tactile things. Yeah. But then now we've moved into more of this, not so much about information, it's more about what can you do with that information? How can you collaborate with like other people to progress your brand or progress like what you stand for. But what that means is that we've still got a group of people that are still stuck in this like information is power kind of mode. Yeah. You know, of course. And you know, I guess what we're seeing as well with ChatGPT and AI, it still needs human input. Yeah. People are scared of it, but guess what? People were scared of Google. People were scared of the internet. Yes. People were scared of TVs. You know, when people were scared of TVs, radio was the number one thing, you know, and like all that type of stuff. Yeah. So we've always gone through these cycles where people are scared of new technology and scared of new situations because they've been reliant on old situations. Absolutely. Everyone's scared of change, aren't they? It's human nature. We want to stay comfortable. Yeah. And I think, I like to try to have so much empathy for people in that because with the boom of social media, everyone has a platform, right? And a lot of things that we were all maybe uneducated about or blind to in our circles prior to having the internet is now at the forefront because everyone's able to speak their truth online. Yeah. But I think we're also it's so much change for the human race to hold at once. A lot of people are starting to live in fear and they're starting to become more scarce with their sharing of their knowledge and their resources and more afraid of the world, which is a shame because it should be used to connect us. But it's only going to continue to evolve. It is terrifying in some ways, but I think also we're seeing the negative sides to it too. So we're seeing a lot of people pull back from their exposure to that and they're using, say, ChatGPT. Well, there are ways that you can use it strategically. Yeah. As opposed to it's going to ruin your entire life and take over the universe. Yeah. Like, let's just take it one day at a time. I was listening to someone, I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about how the speed at which technology moves is so fast. The human brain and the human body hasn't changed in thousands of years. No, exactly. And so we're trying to match the level of complexity with technology with our like primitive brains. Yeah. And some people can't, you know, exactly compute or can't like match things up. You Absolutely. Know? If you say you don't have social media or you don't have, you know, like apps on your phone, people are like, who are you? But, you know, there are some people who can't even. What world are you living in? Exactly. Watching my 95-year-old grandfather trying to operate an iPhone yesterday was adorable. You know, there's just like only so much that we can evolve. We can't, I guess, match the rate at which these machines can progress. Yeah. And so it'll be interesting to see even, you know, how it unfolds in the next few years. It's just the difference between. I remember getting my first phone, I think I was like 15, to now, what a phone can do. Was it a Nokia? It
It was a Nokia T2 purple flip phone.
Oh, the flip.
Yeah, of course. Would you expect any less?
Yeah.
I'm surprised I didn't rhinestone the thing.
Yeah. I'm sure you can buy one of them rhinestoned
I might have seen one or two.
in your closet.
Yep. You've been spying. The CIA thing's back now.
I'm not an ASIO agent. No.
The tables have been turned.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, are you scared of AI? Are you scared of?
No.
No.
No. I try to only keep my focus on the things I can control. In my life, and I'm all about finding peace right now. So
Peace is good.
peace is great, right? So I try not to worry about it. If I can't have any effect on something, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm just going to focus on being the best version of myself I can be and roll with these new things as they develop.
Sometimes that's hard though, because you have expectations.
Totally.
And either expectations of yourself or expectations of other people. And then if they like let you down, it's kind of like, eh.
Absolutely. And isn't that the fun part of being human?
I know.
We're not as predictable as a good old AI is.
No, we're not.
Oh, you were about to start a whole other
No,
thought.
I wasn't. No, I wasn't.
Like, hang on. Well,
humans are the biggest asset in like organizations and businesses, but it's also the biggest liability.
Absolutely.
Because we're human.
Yeah, exactly.
And because like shit happens.
But isn't the shit what makes it most interesting?
Yeah. It is.
It'd be real boring if it was all automated.
Yeah. And, it's kind of like when I go out to a restaurant or a cafe, like with my fiance, it's like I'm interacting with wait staff that much that she's just kind of like, oh, please stop talking. Please stop talking. And I'm like, I'm making their day.
Exactly. I back you on that one.
Yeah.
I totally back you because I think we're facing this issue that people are so disconnected, and that's why we're all so miserable because we're on our phones so much. We order through an app, all these things. Like for me personally, I went through some periods of major depression, and it was always based on being more attached to this and not being connected. And I see that when you go to a restaurant, if you can get a waiter to talk to you for more than one sentence, I think that's an achievement on its own.
It's so true. So true. I highly recommend anybody to set up a podcast because when was the last time, other than maybe going to the movies, if you go to the movies, when was the last time that you actually sat down with someone and had an in-depth conversation and not actually looked at your phone?
So true. You've got to consciously do it, right? You've got to put it away.
Like this whole experience to me is so cathartic.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like therapy because I get to like sit down and like dive into whoever's sitting on that side of the couch.
Oh, I never thought of it that way. And that's so true, right? And I'm sure there's so many takeaways you can learn from their journeys as long as they're willing to open up.
Yeah. So does that mean that you do take some like time out from like social media and like anything online? Like, and how often do you do that?
Ask any of my friends. The memes about people who don't answer their phones for days, that is about me.
Holy shit.
Exclusively.
I feel privileged because you've been quite responsive to me.
Good. I'm glad you've had that experience.
Yeah.
I guess for me, I've never really been able to master the art of so many platforms, right? You can reach us by text, by WhatsApp, by Messenger, by Instagram DM. I've turned it off on some platforms so people can't do it. But for me, I'm very fortunate to have built a following online. But with that, anything you post comes like the expectation of reading however many Any given day there'll be a couple of hundred messages to read, and that just gets overwhelming to me. So my closest friends know if I haven't gotten back to you in, say, a day or two and you need me, just prod me and I'll get back to you straight away. But I suffer from major technology overwhelm. So it's something I'm, I guess, trying to learn to be better at, but I'm sure there are so many people out there who can't stand it.
Yeah, look, there are way too many platforms. I think it is about just being sensible around what are you doing on it? Like, what are you using it for? And then managing your time.
Exactly.
Just like you would manage, other resources at your disposal.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you've got like, I don't know, a band member that you're having to deal with and manage, and like organizing rehearsals and like all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just exactly like that.
Absolutely.
Social media it can be not so social because you feel very insular to what's happening outside.
Yeah.
And so turning things off or like realizing that, you know what, you're not going to like touch that or whatever is a mature thing to do.
Well, also, I guess I have seen the other side of social media in the sense that it's all BS, and that's why I try really hard now to show up authentically because for years when I lived in Malaysia and I was a full-time recording artist, we were sent out in groups like to events, and they were the most miserable events ever.
Why?
Because when there's a group of influencers, some people know how to do influencing as their business, right? And they're all business and they are very emotionally separate from it. But for me, the biggest challenge is everyone puts their best foot forward on socials and they're like, we're having such a great time. And then we would be at an event or we'd even be out at dinner and everyone would film a story and be like, oh, everything's so great. We're having such a great time, blah, blah, blah. And it looks like we're having the best time ever. And then as soon as that phone gets put down, everyone's just sitting on their at the table like not even talking to each other. We're having the most boring night ever, but we looked like we had the best time. Or like you look like you're great friends. And so much of it's fake. There was a girl who asked me to be her bridesmaid at her wedding in Malaysia but she'd never met me. But she wanted to do that as like, there's a lot of like everyone knows how to play the game and get ahead, but they're not posting the real online. So I've done some series online talking about things a lot more like here's what I posted and here's actually what was going on in my life, and people's minds were blown because we just assume everyone knows about the bad as well as the good, but we only post the good on there. So yeah, for me, it's really hard to stay diligent at being like, that's not actually what's going on in that person's life. Like that person could have had a really great time that night or not, but the amount of likes on it doesn't matter.
I think that's a real lesson, right, for people to take on is that sometimes what you see online is what they want you to see.
Yeah.
Like, so you don't necessarily have to like believe everything is so rosy or whatnot, right?
Exactly. I mean, even Netflix doing documentaries on it now too, but you can fake a lifestyle by hiring a house and filming at it. And people are hiring Lamborghinis for $100 a day in LA and posting all this content as if they own it. And there's like businesses that have social media houses now where those dancers and whatever live in those homes that are big mansions, but they don't actually own them, So it's pretty scary. I'm so glad that I did not grow up from a young age because the reality would be so warped.
I mean, it's a little bit like those reality TV shows, the dating reality TV shows, like Bachelor and Bachelorette, like, Married at First Sight, like all of this is like painting this pretty picture of what's actually happening, but behind the scenes, it's like, nah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. None of it's, well, not none of it's real. There are people who genuinely meet each other and have
Yeah.
stayed married on those shows. But yeah, television in general, it's all very calculated and yeah, edited. You can edit something to have been said, nothing like it was said. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's a different world. And it's very heartbreaking for a lot of the people that I don't think we hear about it enough, that people who go into these industries, that's why they say you've got to have a thick skin, because they will eat you alive. And what you think you're getting into is not what you're getting into. So, you know.
Hang on. What does that mean?
Oh, my God. In every sense of the word, right? You're like the tea. Give it to me.
Yeah. If you think you – what? Huh?
Well, just in everything. Like there are some people who go into entertainment, the music industry, all these different public eyes.
Yeah.
Thinking it's going to be one thing, and they get either completely taken advantage of, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I guess there's something that you're not prepared for when you go into the entertainment world, is that majority of the friendships are not real. A lot of people know how to play the game and they're surface level, but they're actually competitive with you at the same time. So for me, that was really heartbreaking. I got burned so many times. So that's now why I try to be like herding together women that really want to see each other win, because the industry has pitted us all against each other for so long. So they're the only vibes I want around these days. But the entertainment game is tough.
So what advice would you give someone who wanted to like get into the entertainment industry?
I always like to say that be prepared to be treated as a product. Because once you step into being one, you're no longer a human being, because people treat you like a product, not a person.
Like a commodity.
You're a commodity. You represent something, but your humanity disappears. So for me, like in Asia, I often say that the biggest heartbreaking moment for me was my record label ran this huge competition to have a holiday with me and go to a big dreamy island. And, you know, that was the thing when they released my first single. Cool idea.
You were a commodity.
I was a commodity, and I'd moved myself out to this country. I was on all of like iTunes, Spotify. My face was there. I was on every TV station, every radio station. Now we're going on this big holiday to this, you know, remote island, Langkawi, and it was amazing. And I got there and I literally called my boyfriend at the time, who was secret because I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend publicly.
Exclusive.
Crying. Yeah, I know, right? But I was crying and I was like, I'm the loneliest I have ever been in my life, because I moved to a foreign country. I got everything I ever wanted, and it was absolutely nothing like what I wanted, because these 6 people who won the competition, one of them was a genuine fan and was the sweetest person and brought his brother, and he was very sweet and very shy. The other ones were not actually fans of me. They just loved winning competitions, and people love being around celebrity. And can you imagine there's 2 record label executives, 2 media representatives, so they come on the trip, then 3 winners and their other people, and then me. Because I lived in the country alone, I didn't bring anyone with me. I didn't have family. I didn't have friends to bring with me. And so the whole day, everyone's doing everything in their pairs, and then they bring out the camera and film you. We're having such a great time. And then as soon as they turn the camera off, they go back to talking to themselves.
Yeah.
And it's kind of soul destroying. And at the time, I didn't speak the language very well. So I'd try to speak the language, and then they'd ridicule me for it not being fluent. And I just felt so alone. And
I'm sorry you felt like that.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, because that's horrible.
It was just really, I remember I was sitting on the balcony at the hotel overlooking just like ocean as far as the world can see. It was just like the most stunning place ever. And I could have wanted to be anywhere else but there, because no one, like I could hear after the day's activities were done, everyone else was having a really good time in the accommodation. No one invited me along, you know, and no one talked to me in between wanting to film their evidence of being with me. So I just cried all night and was on the phone to home being like, I'm not happy. I'm so unhappy. And that was the rest of my journey, you know, because that's why I say I wasn't very strategic in the way that I did it. I was just like, I'm going to be famous. But I didn't realize that fame is worth nothing if you don't have anyone to share it with. And so I was like, yeah, performing, say like I was headlining the KL Fashion Week and like big events or like the YouTube Awards, and then you go home to an empty apartment to no one. And it was miserable. So that's what the entertainment industry is like. If you don't set it up in a way that you have your people and your team, this is why you see artists stay with their teams. If you don't set it up that way, when I came home, I was destroyed as a human being. So the pandemic for me was the biggest blessing. It was. It ripped me out of this alternate universe that I'd built for myself where I thought I was happy. And then I got shoved in a house with my parents and my brother for like 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
so
right? Back to childhood. And I was like,
So you basically the pandemic pulled the ejector cord of you out of this, as you said, this alternate universe, and bang, straight into
a country town in a house with my parents and my brother. Straight back to being a kid again.
Holy shit.
Yeah, right. You're like,
there's so much. Hang on. We need to go back to this whole piece around not having a strategy, but, building this life of all these kind of achievements, that you had. Because you had this idea of like you want to be famous and you want to do really well, and you were obviously doing really well.
Yeah.
But because you weren't sharing it with
anyone,
a loved one or your support network or a group of people, then it's kind of a little bit like, well, why did I waste so much energy kind of like doing it?
Absolutely.
And you're right, like huge celebrities or successful people will always have like a group of close-knit individuals around them that
their entourage, yes.
Yeah, their entourage that they bring along with them, But I think potentially this goal of being famous and in the entertainment industry or being in any industry, like success can be like a lonely platform to sit in.
Yeah.
Because it's you, and because of that fact that you're a one of one.
Yeah.
And, taking the time to be conscious of ensuring that you have enough people around you was probably really hard because you were in another country.
Exactly. And I guess by the time I moved to that country, I was already very recognizable. So it didn't give me a chance to make friends, etc. And the people that I did kind of know that seemed like great people at that time, when I moved there, some of them I still love and adore to this day because they liked me before I moved there and before I had any success. But some of those other friendships didn't work out. But also, I guess another element that people don't talk about is that for women, when you achieve fame, it's very hard to date. It's impossible. It's impossible.
Shit.
You don't think about it, but it's
no,
the
you
opposite
definitely don't
as
think
for
about
men.
it.
Yeah, because for guys, like the more popular become, women just come flocking. But when females are successful, it's kind of the opposite.
We uncover all the hard things on this podcast.
Yeah. Got to be real about it, right?
So what did you do?
Well, it was near impossible because I think also, from my experience, you've also got a very massive cultural difference.
Yeah.
Religious differences, etc. But I guess, how do I say? Often for women who have achieved some kind of status or success, a lot of men, a lot of the attention you get is they don't want to date you. They just want a trophy. They want to be associated with you, but they don't care what comes out of your mouth or who you are as a person. So it's very insincere. You're like a trophy they want to collect and have by their side. So
where have you been like associating yourself with these men?
This is going to blow your mind.
I don't think all of them are like that.
Not all men are like that at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And that's, not at all what I'm saying. Like,
Okay, cool.
yeah, no, I love men, just FYI. I'm not one of those people who's like men against women. No, I think that, I'm in search of a very harmonious relationship of masculine and feminine. It was just in my experience, the kind of men that I was attracting and with the energy that I was putting out there, the more successful I got. Instead of having the chance to form authentic relationship with someone, and therefore then something build naturally, the only men that ever even approached me kind of just wanted to sleep with you. And it was all very insincere in a way. Or like friends that I had that were male would suggest like, oh, yeah, I'd love to go out with you, but you're famous. I'm not interested. And they would just say it like that. And you'd be like, what do you mean? And they'd be like, oh, I don't want the pressure of dating someone in the public eye, which I totally respect and understand. But it was something that I never expected, because when I first went into it, I was in a relationship for 5 years. But at that time, celebrities still couldn't have a partner. It was no, we want you to appear single. They literally wanted to put it in my record contract. Like, you have to appear single at least for 5 years. So I'd had a really great relationship, but that couldn't exist. I sacrificed that to stay overseas. And then, not realizing you would have the challenge of
that's so hard.
Not being able to meet anyone.
Because, like, how do you attempt to remain authentic when you're being forced to, like, put up this facade of like who you are? Exactly.
And also for me, it was in a different culture, a different language, different everything. So there were certain ways you were expected to act. And I also like had people pretending that we were like, not pretending, but implying that maybe we were dating when we weren't. And then I would be half understanding the language that they were using with the interviewer and be like, what's happening? Like, oh, you want to walk the red carpet with me for that reason? You want it to look like we're dating? Yeah, it's a weird world, the entertainment world. But they were the things that I guess ultimately, when I came home and all of that was ripped away, that was very hard for me, because that's where all of your self-worth is, right?
Yeah.
In your success. Yeah. And I was like, now who am I? And I really lost myself for a while, but then eventually I was living in this gorgeous country town called Kyneton out in the Macedon Ranges. I had the most amazing neighbours. Everyone in that town is so lovely. And eventually, as I integrated into that world, I was like, oh, this is what's been missing. I'd happily never be famous a day again in my life, but God, I feel like a human being here. And these people like me for me. And so, now everything I do is based on that.
And like getting back to your roots and like spending time with your parents and your sibling and like
becoming like, what do I have to give to the world as a friend and as a, a family member and as a community member? Like, we started doing in stage 4 lockdown, we did free concerts for our neighbours from our porch, and everyone stayed on their own property. And everyone, like, the people across the street had their kids in the back of their ute, and we literally set up the PA system and performed to the street. And it's like, no amount of money can give you that feeling, right?
Yeah.
Genuine, pure human connection and joy. We had the greatest afternoon. And I was like, this is what life's about.
It's obviously an example of the pandemic doing so much good for like you, which is fantastic, because then that just like it hit the rewind button, brought you back to like a foundation, and then you're able to like propel yourself forward as we kind of like come out of the pandemic.
Yes, I guess you could say it unbuttoned.
Touché.
Like what I did there?
Yeah, I definitely like what you did there.
But yeah, absolutely.
Did you ever? So I grew up in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
I was actually born in Singapore.
I love Singapore.
Yeah, my sister lives in Singapore still. She's there right now. But like, born in Singapore, I was born on holiday, so not a citizen.
Aww.
So Well, I didn't have to do national service, so
That's true. You escaped national
That's
service.
a good thing, yeah. But lived in Indonesia,
Yeah.
Brunei, and then we did live in Singapore.
God.
But when I lived in Singapore, went to the international school,
Yeah.
and like one of my oldest school friends is actually a Malaysian royalty.
Oh,
Would you say
yeah.
royalty?
Yeah, there's a bunch of royal families.
Yeah, like her mum is the cousin to the Sultan of Malaysia.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I don't know if you would have met her or whatever, but because like she would always go to like all these, and she was a singer.
Oh, there you go. Maybe I would have.
Yeah, Juliana Banos.
Oh, I've heard her name, but we haven't met. Yeah, I've heard her name.
Yeah. And because I remember, like, so she's married, she's got 3 kids, and I remember like her putting up a video of like her kids riding a bike in their driveway, right?
Yeah.
And this video like pans across and like follows this kid, and then in the background there's like 1 Ferrari, 2 Ferraris, and I'm like, what?
They're not posing the lifestyle. They're just accidentally showing they actually live it.
Yeah. And then she goes to like all the Formula One.
Yeah.
She's got like photos of her and her kids with like Lewis Hamilton and like Usher and like all these. And I'm just like,
yeah.
It's just a completely different world.
You never know who you're talking to, do you?
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, yeah, that must be wild for you to have lived all around. But I guess, do you identify with Singapore as your like roots? Because your mum's Indonesian. What's the connection with Singapore?
Well, my dad was just like working in Singapore.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and it was a working holiday, I think.
Yeah.
Because my mum was heavily pregnant, then they just put her up in the hospital.
Oh, okay.
And then I came, right? Like a month later. But it was actually really hard, like living in Southeast Asia, being an Australian.
Yeah.
Because I was, I know it doesn't look it right now, but I was the most Asian looking out of my siblings.
Yeah.
And I was the tallest. I was like 6 foot at 12. Right?
Really?
Like stuck out like anywhere.
Everyone would have been like, what?
Yeah. And then when we moved to Perth, I was like 14.
Yeah.
And when you live in Singapore, well, like I had an American accent.
Yes. Yeah, because you went to the foreign schools.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And so,
super common.
So Perth, this tall Asian American sounding person, you know, like racism was hard.
It would have been hard in both countries. I don't know if you've heard of the term third culture kid.
Yeah, I'm a third culture
You're
kid.
You're a third culture kid.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a whole experience that no one else can understand. I've got a lot of friends who were what we call expat brats. And a lot of them were like, say they had one Caucasian parent, one Asian parent. And so no matter where they went, people assumed they either were local or weren't local.
Yeah.
And they just didn't fit the mold. So I can imagine it's been like a really interesting experience for you, because Singapore, especially being that tall, and Singapore's very forward in like saying what they think. Asian culture in general is like, well, you got an American accent. Like they'll just call it out and say it to you, right? Did you get that all the time?
All the time. And it was actually, so I lived there when it was old Singapore, not new Singapore.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So like the tallest building was the Pan Pacific Hotel, which was like 24 floors. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Right. There were no high-rise buildings or anything. I was there when they banned the selling of chewing gum.
Oh my gosh. Different Singapore to what I lived in then.
Which was the start of new Singapore.
Right.
The banning, and people might not know this, or people might know it, but the banning of chewing gum, the banning of selling chewing gum.
Yeah.
You could still go over to the border to Malaysia and buy it and bring it back.
Okay, yeah,
right, and chew it.
Yeah.
They didn't have a chewing gum issue like litter or anything like that. the government wanted to show the rest of Southeast Asia the level of control that they had over their people
Oh, right.
with banning the selling of such an innate thing.
Right. Yeah.
And then once that happened, the
Mhm.
rest of Southeast Asia were like, okay, we want to do business with you because you are very compliant. Your people are very compliant, and the level of compliance for banking and
Yeah.
everything is just phenomenal there.
Yeah, it's they know how to run a tight ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a different world moving there from here.
Mm.
I guess when I moved there was 2009, so very different to when you did.
Yep.
Absolutely, it would have been a bit of a different experience. Have you been back
I have.
in recent years?
Yeah,
Have your sisters there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've then seen the difference. But it's the cleanest, safest country.
Yeah.
I had an incredible 3 years living there, and the food.
At Dreamworld, did you say?
I used to work at Movie World on the
Movie
Gold
World?
Coast, but
Yeah.
in Singapore, I was the opening cast for Universal Studios Singapore down on Sentosa.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when I lived in Singapore, you only had a cable car or a ferry to get to Sentosa.
Oh.
Yeah.
No
And now
bridge.
you can drive.
Now you can walk.
Now you can walk. Now you can catch a taxi. You can still do the cable car if you want, but
I mean, if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. But I mean, yeah, it's a very multicultural country. I learned so much in Singapore about that because in Australia before I moved there, I didn't even understand the difference between my friend. I remember talking to my friend Hazan and him saying, "Oh, I'm Malay Singaporean." I'd be like, "So you're Malaysian?" And he's like, "No, I'm Malay Singaporean." And I'd be like, "I don't understand what that means." You know what I mean? Because we'd never been exposed to it before.
Saya tidak tahu.
Yes, exactly. Tak faham. I know. And it's a whole other world where I guess, you've got your main cultures, Chinese, Indian, Malay, and other, your box ticks, as we call it. Yeah, it was for me, it was so the most rewarding experience hanging out with the locals. Because I guess, when you're an expat somewhere, you can hang out with
Other
other
expats.
foreigners, but I've never done that before. I've always hung out with the locals and just look how it changed my life. It changed the course of my life. So yeah, I think Singapore's one of the best places.
The thing I miss the most about Singapore is the food.
It's so good, right? And so cheap in some places.
So cheap.
Oh my God.
I mean, you could pay the most expensive, high end meal, but
Exactly.
the cheapest ones are just as good.
I know. It's mind blowing. They would die if they saw the price of chicken rice here.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, hit me with a hard one straight
Yeah.
off the bat of the food. Oh,
Learn how to cook
So-
chicken rice, Cassidy.
I know, right? Learn how to cook really good soup tulang. It's my favorite. Okay. Advice I would give my younger self, slow down. I think-
Slow down.
Yeah. I'm so ADD that I'm just 100 miles an hour all the time, and it's always feeling like I'm not on time.
Right.
We're always sold hustle hard, move quick, etc. And I bought into that for so long, and I burnt myself out so hard. Instead of now, I'm on a journey of slowing down and getting in touch with my body and my intuition again, and stopping to ask myself what feels right, because I feel when you block out the noise of the strategies, the content plans, everything, if you just actually stop, sit, slow down, what's the next right move to make? That's the move. And that's always where that intuition comes from. And when you're trying to rush, nothing works out. So that's my current advice to my younger self. Ask me tomorrow, it'll be completely different.
I think there's definitely some truth in that advice, because sometimes when you move too quickly, you make mistakes.
Yeah.
It's okay to make mistakes, but it's, if you're not achieving the right thing.
Yeah, it can snowball in the wrong direction a little too far, right?
I guess it's also it's kind of like that analogy of, you know, pointing a ship one direction versus two degrees to the left or 2 degrees to the right. Like, you know, over a 10-year period, you're going to be in a completely different situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess slowing down allows you to act out of authenticity and stay in authenticity if that's what you value. Because for me, that's what I value. I put authenticity very high on my personal list of values. So, yeah, that's what I'm noticing allows me to stay in authenticity.
Are you someone who is goal orientated, or you love to immerse yourself like in the process of doing things?
Both. I say I intuitively know that I'm meant to do things, and I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Perfect example, my mum was in the car with me in Malaysia. We're in a taxi and we drove past the KL Opera House. And I was like, I'm going to perform there one day. And she said to me, she goes, I was like, yeah, sure, Cass. Like, you know, I don't sing opera now, you know, all those things. Mum was just like, yeah, righto, Cass. And she said it was only 2 years later, I was in the cab on the way to see you perform at the Opera House. And I was like, I'm not going to question it. Not going to question it. But I literally did nothing from that minute on, from saying, I know that I'm going to perform there. I did nothing to actually achieve that. I didn't take a single step to get that show. I just continued doing what I do on the other side of things, which is every show I treat like it's the biggest opportunity of my life. Everything I do, I put 1,000% into. And I feel like that allows you to level up to be in alignment with that opportunity and ready for that opportunity to come. And so 2 years later, someone just sent me a message on Facebook one day and said, hey, would you be available to be a guest with these artists at the Opera House for 4 nights? And I was like, yes. But I'd had to become that level of artist that invitation was possible, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bit of the both. I'm like riding the wave of every single thing that comes to me. I'm trying to be the best version of myself I can be. But there are points that I know that I'll be like, oh, I feel like I'm meant to do that. So that's not a goal per se.
It's almost like this manifestation piece of like, if you just become the better version of yourself, like the universe will throw you things
100%.
that, you know, that may not necessarily have been a goal, but like, you know.
Yeah, you're aligned with it. I feel like the thing that in my journey that I have learned, I'm quite a spiritual person, and I feel like when you feel a pull towards things, it's for a reason. And that's how it's always been for me. I felt a pull towards that. There's an apartment that I ended up living in, and I saw the building and I was like, oh, same feeling. Like there's just something about that building. And 6 months later, I was living in that building. You know what I mean? And I was there for 2 years. And I've found that when I've met people and partners, like the partner I was with for 5 years, the minute I laid eyes on him, I was like, oh, who is that? I literally said it out loud and I realized I was sitting alone. And I was like, how embarrassing. But there was just like an energetic pull towards each other. And I just had like, and it's like 5 years of our lives we spent together. Sometimes there's like an intuitive knowing of something. And I feel like, it's part of your personal journey here on this earth. It's a pull for a reason.
Do you believe in ghosts?
I am one. No. Sorry. Just taking a dig at how pale I am. Casper was my nickname when I was young.
Right.
Yeah.
Did your parents give you that nickname?
No. It was my baseball team when I was young, I think.
Your baseball team?
It was always, I got bullied in school. People would be like, Casper, Casper. Whereas I didn't. Yeah. The white little ghost. Yeah. But I guess.
Kids are so cruel.
Oh, that was nothing. Bullying was great fun.
Well, okay, so when I was younger, so as I mentioned, lived in Southeast Asia, grew up in Southeast Asia.
Ghost Central. They got all those ghost stories.
Oh, no, like this is an example of like kids being cruel.
Bullying.
Yeah, bullying. But like being Australian.
Yes.
but not actually having lived in Australia.
Yeah.
You know, like we'd start a new school year with like new kids, and some of them would be Australian. I remember one kid saying, "Oh, what nationality are you?" And you know, Asian looking, American accent. I'm like, "Oh, I'm Australian."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, what part of Australia did you live in?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I haven't actually lived in Australia."
And they'd be like, "What?"
And they're like,
Yeah.
"Well, how can you call yourself Australian?"
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was this kind of like, I didn't really know where I fit in.
Yeah, of course.
You know?
Of course. That third culture thing, right? Because you know your roots, but they don't quite understand it. Yeah, I can imagine it was a very unique upbringing for you. I've got a lot of friends who are third culture kids. One of them's a third culture kid therapist.
Oh.
And yeah, so we've had so many.
Shit.
Yeah, we've had so many in-depth discussions about third culture and the effects that it has on people. So yeah, I was like, I don't want to get in too deep, but yeah. Do you feel like
I might have to get their number.
Yeah, absolutely. I can get it for you. Do you feel at peace with it now? Like that's your unique story of your upbringing?
100%.
Yeah.
It's definitely looking back now, I'm thankful for have gone through all of those experiences.
Yeah.
Because it's made me who I am, and it's given me the skills to be able to talk to absolutely anybody and deal with like lots of different situations.
Yeah.
Plus, like when I've told people my story, they're like, holy shit, like you've lived like 4 lifetimes in such a small time frame.
Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe I have. Maybe but that's the way that things have kind of come out.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I guess it's a bit hard for people to comprehend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's so different.
It's so different, and it's not, I guess, the usual upbringing, right? You don't realize unless, I guess we call it the other, my friends and I, like say like if you're in a community, I'm in love with this cat, by the way. Hey, buddy. People are so used to having their life experience. And so if you're the other, you're the unknown to them. It's not the normal. And they're intrigued, but sometimes their intrigue can actually be offensive. So I can imagine that's something that, you know, to you it feels like bullying, and always it's the same thing because you're in a repetitive situation where you get the same comments. And these people don't realize that they are actually being insensitive, etc. But I think it is important to remember that the challenges that we go through in life shape us into who we are now.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And if you can step outside of it and learn from it in that way, and understand that it's actually a gift to be uniquely other, as my friends and I say, that then you can use that as a complete blessing in your life.
Back to baseball and being Casper.
Let's go.
How long did you play baseball for?
Not long. I was horrible. They had to spend an entire session trying to teach me how to catch the ball. And the one time I did, the entire team cheered. So if that like gives you an indication, I was that kid. They were like, get her off the team.
So you weren't like sporty at all?
I was a dancer.
Yeah. I mean, you were dancing.
So I was a dancer or a swimmer. I did both those. Yeah. Yes. But no, definitely not a hand-eye coordination kind of kid. Not my game. That's why I'm not a stunt person.
I mean, you know, yeah. You go with your strengths.
Yeah,
you go with your strengths, you know, cut your losses with the weaknesses.
Exactly.
Have you ever wanted to be a stunt person?
No. Oh, I did go to one training session and I was like, this hurts. And then I wanted to be a stunt driver, and then I was like, driving makes me sleepy sometimes. Yeah, because I'm so go. Yeah, I always like to make sure if I'm the driver, I'm wide awake.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't drive sleepy.
So you have your residency at Graysland, and you also do theatre performances as well, don't you?
I do a bit of everything.
Bit of everything.
I have done some theatre performances, but I'm not doing them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer, basically I'm limiting myself now to the hype DJ stuff. So it's singing and DJing at the same time. The motivational speaking and launching a business at the moment called the Fearless Fempreneur. So it is sort of like how I take what I got from my father as a stuntman into what I want to do in the world. The fearless is where that comes from. It's more about the art of being afraid and doing it anyway, not being fearless.
Yeah.
And I think with entrepreneurs, we look at all of these people online and go, oh, well, it just comes natural to them. They're not afraid. They just know what to do. So, there's I've got an online course coming out, and I've also got some in-person events that we'll be running soon.
Hey, that's great.
Yeah.
I heard a quote. Again, I can't remember who said it, but it was like, if you're like, it was to do with bravery, and if you think you're not brave, you need to just take that first step, and like taking that first step is the act of bravery.
Absolutely.
You know, and like taking that first step out of your comfort zone into that fear zone is the only thing that's really going to like propel you forward.
Absolutely. It's like when you climb a mountain, you don't look at the peak, you just take the steps in front of you, right? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's also that same thing, like coming back to self and being like, what's the next step? Instead of trying to work out the strategy of what are the next 10 steps, and allow the life journey to unfold in front of you. So, yes, that's definitely the next goal.
Interesting, the entrepreneur stuff and the public speaking. Like, why? Why did you want to do that?
Always felt called to do that.
Really?
Always, yeah. I mean, I think one of my gifts in life is putting on events and bringing people together. Our mutual friend that we know, Jess, that's how we met. We met at a Women in Business, like International Women's Day event, and I was DJing and speaking at that event and singing, and the vibe in the room was epic. It was like we were all saying it was like therapy. You know, we're just all really bonded and communicated in such an open way with each other. Hey, buddy. And that's the spaces I want to create for people. If I have a natural gift in creating events that create a space where other people can feel more human connection, then why would I not use that gift? Yeah. Yeah.
Have you got any like motivational speaking like events coming up?
Not that I'm allowed to talk about publicly.
Okay. Damn. Thought I was getting exclusive.
I do have a couple of things coming up.
Okay.
Yes.
For this year or for like next year? For next year. That's great.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So that's sort of the new realm that I'm stepping into.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love hearing when people are taking the steps or taking the initiative to do something different or do something else.
Thank you.
You know, because it's people like you that give examples for other people to watch and listen and to get inspired by.
Thank you.
You know, like to hear your story that you know, went overseas and did all of that, and then the pandemic ripped you out and you kind of had to like come back to your roots, and now you're like doing something completely different after 4 years. It's like amazing.
Thank you. I mean, it's I think it's all about that willingness to be vulnerable and actually share the truth of what you've been through can really help people. And I've done a lot of content over the last couple of years that has been really raw and vulnerable, even like being open about when I got dropped by my record label and, you know, like the savage realness of life. Oh, you're so cute. And the messages you get when you create that kind of content is what, like the messages I would get when I first started singing in Malay. I feel like they're the signs from the universe to keep going in that direction because people need it. And I saw a video last night that was like, oh, that's what I needed to hear today, because I think when you share things in a motivational sense, you can get a bit of imposter syndrome and be like, well, who am I to tell people how to live their lives, you know? But ultimately, you're just authentically sharing your vulnerability and your true experiences in the hope that someone else needs to hear it that day. And creating content now, that's where I think we all need to make it from, because the creative block stops when you go, what do people want to see today? You know, who am I supposed to be? What's in line with my brand? You know, instead of being like, oh, what would I say? Like, how am I feeling today? What is something that someone else in the world might want to know about today that could help them? So that's the space I'm now trying to operate from.
It's this this juggling act between creating stuff for like your brand versus being authentic, and like creating stuff that comes from the heart.
Yeah.
You know, and like, is it better to create stuff from the heart and get like 7 likes or like 10 views versus something for your brand that, you know, a lot of people like or a lot of people prefer listening to?
Yeah.
You know, it's this,
Yeah. Can I give you my true opinion on that?
Yeah.
Yes. Create what gets the 7 likes,
Mm.
because the 7 likes are the people that authentically connect with what you do, because that is what I have learnt over the years. I say you've got 100,000 followers. You could have 100,000 followers but not be able to sell 50 tickets to a show. Because those people actually don't support you. But all you need is like 100 followers who are on board with everything you post, and they 100% resonate with you, and they 100% know, like, and trust you. And you'll be able to sell double what someone who's got 100,000 followers has. And so I think that's what a lot of people are realizing now. You see so many influencers now who are shutting their accounts or completely rebranding or just taking time off, because it was like me. I no longer connected with the old version of myself. And the following that I was building, I loved Malay music. I loved learning about different cultures and everything, but there's all these other sides to me that I wasn't allowed to share because it didn't fit the brand. And so then when I stopped making that content, I've lost thousands of followers, even in a day sometimes, because I'm not fitting the mold of what they want anymore. You know, I'm not being that version that they followed, which is just dance monkey, you know. Dance monkey dance. Do what we say that we want to see you do, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just my truth now, is it's like that ate me alive. So I would rather just watch my following count drop, but know that the people who are in my little circle are the people that genuinely like what I am doing and who I actually am. So
the real value, I think, is acknowledging the fact that it's okay to transform to another version of yourself.
Yeah.
Because you almost like needed to, or you wanted to.
Yeah.
Because you knew that you weren't happy.
Yeah.
And that, you know, coming back home and spending time back here and like enriched you and fueled you even more to go, you know what, I'm going to recreate myself again.
Yeah. And I think, like, for me, I had a long list of things that I was like, I think I'm going to do this in my lifetime. And I thought I was going to do it in that lens, in Malaysia, in that language, doing those things, making those kinds of deals. And now I'm like, oh, well, maybe it's all supposed to fall apart to come together. And I can still achieve those things, like write a book, do those things. But it's just going to be from a different lens, in a different language, in a different culture. You got to allow it all to evolve and level up. So yeah, I'm excited to see what's to come with it.
And the whole thing is a redirection.
Yeah,
it's redirection.
I don't think life could have redirected me any harder, could they? That's like a full, like, there's not even a 90-degree pivot. That's like 180, just like gone. But it's been a ride.
It would have been really hard being dropped by your record label.
Oh, savage.
How did that kind of like play out?
Oh, it was the worst. It wasn't working. Like, ultimately, it wasn't meant to work out. I had 2 record labels that I was working with combined.
Mm.
And they're all great at what they do. And at the end of the day, I was a product. And I was actually really unhappy. We were all unhappy, and we'd expressed that we were not happy. But basically the way that they handled it was dropping me by text message.
Oh, shit.
2 days before my visa expired. So it's not, the text message was literally along the lines of, in a group WhatsApp, not even a personal text message, and my apartment building overlooks their office. I was just there. So culturally, there's your avoidance. But it just ripped my heart out of my chest because I woke up to a message that said, like, hey, Cassidy, as you know, your visa expires in 2 days. 2 days earlier, they'd told me, I was like, where's my visa renewal? And they were like, yeah, it's coming. And they said, as you know, your visa expires in 2 days. We've decided not to renew your pass or to continue doing business together. Moving forward, we're going to go our separate ways. You've got 2 days to leave the country. All the best. And I just read the text message and just broke down.
Yeah. As you would.
Yeah, I had to, thank God I have so many beautiful friends in Singapore who they were like, get on a bus, come to Singapore, come stay here for a few days until you figure out what your next move is. And, you know, it was horrific. Like, I was in Singapore and I was getting phone calls from shows in Malaysia saying, where are you? You're on air in 2 minutes. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm in Singapore. I'm not with Warner anymore. And they hadn't even cancelled my engagements. They just dropped me and then just let everyone else, like, it really burnt a lot of bridges for me. And so not only is it savage to be dropped in that manner and then have to claw your way back to the top sort of thing, those were the same people that were messaging me when I was doing the Opera House being like, I'm so proud of you.
It's the reputational damage as a result of them not, like, following up or, like, closing off or withdrawing you from, like, future events and stuff.
Exactly, and not having the human decency to just sit you down as a person. The same people who claim we're your family here then just drop you by text and won't answer your calls. But I also said to a friend, I know I wasn't happy. It's just also the ego of not being the one that pulled the plug. So that was really hard, really, really hard to swallow. But there was so much I had to learn from that too, right? Like anything, I had to learn, cool, well, they weren't doing exactly for me what I had hoped, but what can I learn from it? And now years later, it took me years to overcome that bruise to the ego. But I did learn, like, how could I have been a better artist to work with? How could I have been more appreciative of what they were doing, even though it didn't align with what I thought they should be doing? You know, it wasn't all just them as the problem. It just wasn't meant to work at that time.
It sounded as if it was almost a relationship that was like one way, like they were like telling you what they wanted and then they were expecting you to kind of just like do it as opposed to it being a two-way conversation. Like,
absolutely.
You know,
they never knew anything about me.
Yeah.
That's what it ultimately came down to. There was one show that they wanted me to fulfill, and I did that a couple of months after they dropped me. We agreed to still do that show together. And that was the first show I'd ever had creative control over. And so I showed up and I just like had nothing to lose, you know, like they say with Beyonce, piss me off and I'll give you the best show ever. And so I did this show. I could dance. I could like be in character. I sang songs that really suited me. I just was actually able to show my skill set. And when I got off stage, the representative from the label was like, what was that? Literally, he's like, what was that? I've seen you perform for the last year. What was that? And I said, well, maybe if you'd taken the time to get to know me, you'd have realized that I had so much more to offer you guys.
Yeah.
And we went our separate ways.
Yeah.
And so, and then after that, from that show, I got years worth of work because people saw what my actual skill set was. And so everything happens for a reason, but they definitely never got to know me as an artist, or they never tailored anything to me. But that's also an outdated business model. It's not to do with me. They just think that they know best and how to, I guess, build someone into a brand.
It's a very egotistical approach in like an old school way of doing
It
things.
is.
You know,
It really is.
like actually get to learn, listen and engage, and like get to know people, because then you can be more successful in a joint venture, in a joint outcome.
Yeah.
And who knows whether or not, if they did do that, like you would still be there, you know, or like
Absolutely.
whatever.
Yeah, well, that means that social media has now flipped that power dynamic.
Yeah.
And I was one of the early artists in that teething process. That's what they had to learn, was I came in as a brand and they didn't. So, you know, they didn't take advantage of that. And whereas now I'm sure they approach their relationships with artists very differently, because they understand, okay, this person's coming in with a brand already. We've got to listen to them on how to, if we want a piece of their pie, we've got to come to the table more.
Yeah. I'm sure with like new artists or new performers though, there would probably still be this like, oh, we're going to mold them into what we think they should be. Yeah. Because we're going to add value to them as opposed to them adding value to us. You know, again, that, and I agree, the advancements of social media and technology have allowed the individuals to have more control, which is a great thing, because it means that these large organizations or conglomerates don't, like the power shift is more to the individual. Yeah. The disadvantage to that is that if you're not constantly doing stuff, you know, then I guess there's pros and cons to everything, right? That's why you got to find the right people to work with. Yeah.
So yeah, that's where my focus is moving forward, making sure it's always very aligned.
Yeah, aligned and authentic. Yeah. And real.
And feels good.
Yeah.
It's you've got to pay full attention to that instinct when you walk into a space. Do I contract or do I expand? If you expand, you stay. If you contract, you run. In anything, especially in business. Yeah. That's my biggest lesson.
Amazing. How can people find you, Cassidy?
You can find me everywhere at Cassidy La Creme.
Cassidy La Creme. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Let me take a quick selfie. Amazing.
I want one too.
Yeah.
Would you better take it? You've got those great long arms. And I can't lift my arms above shoulder height in this top. Thank you.
Oh, hang on. 3, 2, 1. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for coming along to have a chat. And can't wait to see some of this awesome stuff that you've got going on.
Thank you.
End of the year and next year.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to let me share my story. Your questions are amazing. So hopefully people can take away from this.
Thank you so much. And I'll get down to Graceland and
let's go.
See you do a performance.
Yes. I'm going to make you do the YMCA with me. Let's go.
Well, I'll bring the like microphone. We can do like an interview down there.
Yes. I want the unbuttoned microphone. I'll bring it on stage with me.
Amazing. Awesome. Thanks everyone for listening in. Make sure you hit subscribe and that notification bell, and I'll catch you guys all on the next one. See you.